We're looking forward to the negotiation. I think it's going to be positive. We'll, of course, see. As the President of the United States said, if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we're certainly willing to extend the open hand. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. So we're going to try to have a positive negotiation. The President has gave us some pretty clear guidelines, and we're going to see.
Here we go. Vice President J.D. Vance is wheels up to Pakistan, leading U.S. negotiations with Iran and looking to make a fragile 2-week ceasefire lasting peace. Welcome back to the second hour of the Big Money Show, everyone. I'm Jackie DeAngelis, along with my witty co-host, and joining us for the hour, Fox News contributor DeRoy Murdoch. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Negotiations are set for tomorrow, but in the meantime, America and Iran seem very far apart on a deal. President Trump slamming Tehran for restricting tanker traffic in the Strait of Hormuz and trying to charge tolls. And investors are getting their first look at the conflict's impact on prices. Inflation data out today shows prices up 3.3% in March, but if you take out energy and food costs, only up 2.6%.
What we expect and what future markets expect is that there's going to be, a rapid reduction in energy prices once we get the straits open. Once the energy prices start to come down, don't forget that'll put downward pressure on inflation. And starting with core at 0.2, I think that the outlook for the Fed having the room to cut rates is going to be very solid.
And that is precisely the reason, DeRoy, that Iran is looking to drag out the talking period, the ceasefire period, the war itself. Their end game is to make this go as long as possible so the U.S. consumer feels pain, and they know that President Trump watches that, is thinking about the midterms and how all of this looks.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And excuse me, I've got a cold today, so sorry if I sound like a frog. But I think there's some translation problem here. I think we use the term ceasefire. I think translated into Farsi, that's open fire. I've not seen any fire ceased on their part. I mean, 2 hours after the ceasefire began, they started lobbing missiles at Tel Aviv. They were supposed to open up the Strait of Hormuz. I think 4 ships got through yesterday versus about 100 before the war started. They're still lobbing bombs at people. So they are not following this ceasefire, as far as I can tell. It's supposed to be a 2-sided ceasefire. I think we've ceasefire on our side. They continue. So at some point, we got to tell, I don't know if it's J.D. Vance who delivers the message or Jared Kushner or what have you, that ceasefire means ceasefire. They continue this sort of stuff. And if it goes on much longer, it'll be back to bridge and power plant night, which was supposed to happen on Tuesday and didn't. And it's very simple. The Iranians don't have to do anything special. Just let the ships go through. They don't have to do anything active. Just don't send any missiles or ships or anything else out there. That'll start moving, and I think things will start improving dramatically.
This is the problem, though. They have an inability to follow rules. They'll say they're going to do something. They do exactly the opposite. They have proven themselves over 47 years to not be trustworthy. On top of that, going into this negotiation, they put their 10-point their wish list out there. None of it is acceptable to the United States. First and foremost, you got to open the strait in full, like in earnest, but also you got to give us the uranium that can make nuclear weapons. You have to promise that you won't start enriching again. And you have to open your doors to American inspections, Gary. To me, and remember, my mom is Iranian and came to this country before the revolution. I'm telling you, that's never going to happen.
I looked at the 10 points, and the first thing I put on X was, that's the 10 points? That we're never going to agree to that. So I don't know where we are with this. I don't know what the outcome's going to be because, look, they're not nice people. They have no interest in doing good things. They are a rogue government that has determined to destroy, kill, and maim. They've been doing it for ages, and I don't know why anybody would think all of a sudden they're going to be playing nice. So I'm worried about it. Look, I hope the president, J.D. Vance, in negotiations gets something done, but my expectations, unfortunately, are low, and if nothing comes of this, and as the president put, and I'll paraphrase, all heck breaks loose, there's oil at 110, maybe even more than that, and because you know what happens with speculators, and then nothing but trouble going forward if that happens.
Tegan, what's your gut feeling on his chess game here, the president? What is he doing?
I can never, ever claim to know where the president is headed and what he's thinking, because he's always looking ahead. The market is saying, now, if you look at the Dow, it's at 47.8. That is still, it's roughly 1,000 points below where it was. 47,884. It was at 48,977 the day before this conflict launch. Oil was at $67 a barrel and change. So we're not fully back to where we were. Oil certainly isn't. I would expect that a premium remains in oil for time to come, an unknown time to come. But the market is, for the most part, factoring in and into this conflict. And if something doesn't happen to end it, and essentially we stop spending borrowed money, and we bring troops home, what investors want and what the market wants is not necessarily what's good for the United States and good for the entire world. The Strait of Hormuz is very problematic, even beyond a full reopening, which is a huge question mark. But how Iran is being enriched right now and how Russia is being enriched right now. So this is a report from an oil analyst. A Russian VLCC, which stands for Very Large Crude Carrier, crossed the Strait of Hormuz, heading to Kark Island to load Iranian oil. You have a war against Iran, and Iran is currently the only country in the region actively exporting oil on a daily basis and the only one receiving empty tankers to carry its oil. President Trump has already lifted sanctions on Iranian oil on water and the tankers carrying it. The higher oil prices that benefits Iran. Russia is expected, I believe, to get an additional further waiver of selling its crude. So where does that end? Does that continue in perpetuity? Because Iran is looking at the Strait and its ability to sell oil and certainly thinking that's going to be part of the deal, that we will control the Strait in some way and collect money from it, but moreover, we will be able to sell our oil and just refill the coffers of this murderous regime.
Everything you're speaking to speaks to the point, Taylor, of why we wouldn't want the duration of this to be longer than what was originally forecast. And we're in that territory a little bit. It was 4 to 6 weeks, and then he added 2 to 3 weeks. But, to Kevin Hassett's point, you want to get oil prices down. You want to starve the bad actors. You want to help the American consumer. So I'm just trying to understand why on earth you would take 2 weeks to negotiate with people that you know are not truly negotiating.
I have no idea what's going to happen, but I don't think it'll be 2 weeks. I think we'll have an idea on Saturday if there's genuine points of meeting, and then we'll know Monday if we're resuming conflict. That is why I am surprised, and maybe Gary can help me out, that this is a market that isn't actually selling off more as we go into the weekend, as we go into Monday. When you think about WTI at 91, Brent at 97, we're below 100, but we're nowhere near below 90 or 80 or 70. And you have a market that just had a massive 2-day rally. Today would actually be the first losing day that we've had after 7 straight days of gains. So I'm surprised that there isn't more hesitation heading into this meeting when you have an S&P 500 that's basically unchanged. And I can't figure out if this is a market that is so focused on earnings, big tech, fundamentals that they're not appreciating, or is this a market that's underestimating the impact of what will be a drawn-out war? Because I go into this weekend not confident that two sides can come to meet, and yet big tech is up 0.2%.
If you would have told me weeks ago that we went to 110 plus oil and we're still near 100, GDP was 0.5%. Job market had a good month, but the month before, not great. Inflation's picking up. I would have thought the Dow be 42,000 right now.
Yeah.
So the market's just doing a fantastic job of holding up pretty well. Great rally off of supposed news. And I'm a big believer there is a premium on hope. There is hope here that we're going to get out of this eventually, but who knows when eventually is. And the longer it plays out, I think the tougher it gets. Why? Because then we get back to the fundamentals. The cost of, and by the way, I've never understood how they report inflation numbers backing out energy and food, which is basically like everything. The cost of energy is gargantuan to the economy, not just at the pump and for airlines and cruise lines, but how many thousands of products are made with petroleum? So if this lasts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, the adjusting of profits lower is going to have a huge impact. So every day matters at this point. The problem is, and I think you said it best, why didn't they just open up the strait? We supposedly had a ceasefire and some sort of deal just for 2 weeks, open up the strait for 2 weeks. There's nothing getting through except you said they're friends. Russia is making a hell of a lot of money right now.
Well, we are too, right? Especially if you think our break-evens are 30, 40, 50, 60. At 100, our companies are winning. I don't want to get too far out over my skis, but a couple of days ago, Citrini Research put out a report. They sent an analyst to the Strait. More vessels than reported are moving through. They're just turning off their radar.
Oh, right.
Huh, that's interesting.
So they literally sent an undercover guy, and he went in through the strait.
Let's hope that's right.
And it's
No, it is right. They turn off the trackers, so they get.
So I don't know if that means we are overestimating the cost. If oil should come down, if there's now long term though going to be an inherent risk premium, if we think that Iran will now always be involved in the strait, what does that mean for 6 month out futures? But
the market is spot on right where it is. You covered energy for a long time. Oil prices below $100 a barrel, where the Strait of Hormuz is closed, in essence, is incredible. And it's because oil is getting out of the region through Saudi Arabia's East-West pipeline. Now, it was hit by Iran just a couple of days ago, and there was some damage, but until then, there was 5 million barrels per day being loaded and exported out of the Red Sea. That is 1/3, a full 1/3 of the crude that flows through the Strait of Hormuz, just that pipeline. And I will note there was a Saudi announcement just a short while ago about they are doing everything in their power to expand modes of crude and transportation within the country to get crude out. 5 new logistics routes connecting the ports of the Arabian Gulf to the center and north of the kingdom, extending to the Red Sea ports and countries north of the kingdom through a multimodal transport network that combines road and rail. So, and also the bigger picture, natural gas has collapsed. That benefits our industrial economy. Our oil and gas companies are benefiting from this. Our weapons manufacturers are benefiting from this. And inflation, other than fuel, is in check. And what matters? Food. Food inflation notched the lowest reading in 5 years. Eggs have fallen almost 3.5% in March, 3.8% in February, and 7% in January. So there's a lot that's given our nation and our economy ballast.
We've got to move on. I'm so sorry. Okay, go.
Very quick, transponders, very interesting. Are these people sneaking past the Iranians, or are they basically saying, look, turn off your transponder, we'll pretend not to see you, and you'll pretend just to go by us? So maybe they're doing this as a face-saving gesture, let some of the oil out, let some of the steam out of the, out of the pressure cooker.
How does satellite not see that, though?
Well, maybe they don't, but maybe it's like, okay, we don't see anything, we see nothing, and it goes out.
Well,
perhaps, I don't know, that's sort of an interesting point you raise.
It depends on where they're flagged. They could be Iranian tankers.
I liked Mike Murphy's explanation on what is happening with the market is that the larger part of the destruction has been done by the U.S. and Israel. And even if we do go after the bridges and the power plants, there might be more minimal disruption, but that the market is looking at it from a perspective of the hard work has been done. We're going up from here. That seems to explain part of what's happening. And Dagan, your explanation on oil, I thought was really good, too.